Hi, so this video is on dilations. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to look at some definitions first. So a dilation just means that a figure, meaning like a shape, is going to get larger or smaller. So it changes size, but the shape stays exactly the same. So the figure changes size, but the shape remains the same. Okay. So if, for example, I were to enlarge a rectangle, if this side is 2 and this side is 4, if I were to enlarge it by 2 so that this side is now 4 and this side is 8, I would have to have it by the same amount on each side. So the rectangle has the exact same dimensions, okay, or the same dilation, okay, the same scale factor. So if a triangle changes, it's still going to have all the same angles in the triangle, and then all of the sides would have to be multiplied by the same number when it's changing. The size can go up or down for the dilation, so sometimes it gets bigger and sometimes it gets smaller. So that is what an enlargement is. So an enlargement is a dilation that gets larger, obviously, but the scale factor, so the scale factor is what you multiply each side by to get the new or the dilated figure. So if it's an enlargement, the scale factor is going to be bigger than 1. That's going to make the new shape bigger, right? If it's a reduction, it's going to get smaller. So a reduction is a dilation with a scale factor that is less than 1. Actually, I should say it's between 0 and 1. Okay, it's bigger than 0, but it's less than 1. So, for example, my scale factor might be 1/2 or 1/4 or 1/9. Okay, you're not going to have a scale factor that's negative. Okay, so if it's a fraction or a decimal, it's going to get smaller if the decimal is between 0 and 1. If it is a fraction, it will be greater than 1. Okay. All right, so let's, okay, so what is a scale factor? So a scale factor is a number, and usually it's called K. So K is kind of the variable that we always use when we're talking about scale factor. So it's a number K that creates a dilation when you multiply each dimension of a shape. So a number K that creates a dilation when you multiply each dimension by, or of a shape by K. Of a shape by it. Okay, so K, if K is greater than 1, it's going to be an enlargement, right? It's going to get bigger. If K is between 0 and 1, like 1/2 or 0.5, well, those are the same, 0.5, 0.37, it's going to get smaller. Every dimension, meaning if I have like a rectangle, this dimension is 2, this dimension is 7. If my scale factor is 3, I would multiply each dimension by the scale factor of 3, and it would get bigger. If it were 1/2, I would divide each of them by 2, or times them by 1/2, same thing, and it would get smaller. Okay, so that's what a dilation is. Those are what scale factors are. So let's go ahead and look at some examples. So the first one, determine whether this is a reduction or an enlargement, and determine if what the scale factor is. So it tells me here it's going from orange to blue. So the orange shape down here is this little rectangle that goes from -1 to 1 and then over from 0 to 1. The blue one goes from -4 to 4 and then over to 4. So it went from orange to blue. Okay, so the original one here is called the pre-image. Okay, so the orange shape here is called the pre-image. The blue shape is called the image. Okay, so the one we started with is called the pre-image. The one it goes to is called the image. Now, you notice that these little A prime, B prime, it has this little dash that you say that A prime, B prime, C prime, D prime. The ones with the prime on them will always be the image. Okay, so that notation alone can tell me which one I started with and which one I ended with. Okay, so I end with the image. It's the one that has the little primes on it. I start with the regular A, B, C, D, and that's the pre-image or the starting point. Okay, so I can see that this must be an enlargement because the shape got bigger. So the first question was reduction or enlargement, and it is an enlargement. The second question is, what is the scale factor? So in order to find the scale factor, we always will take a dimension of something about the image, and we'll put it over something about the pre-image. Okay, so we would take A prime and put it over A. Now we can either use a side length or an x value of the coordinate or a y value of a coordinate. Okay, now not all of them will work every time, but any of them are acceptable ways to find the scale factor. They'll give you the same answer. So if I were to use a side length, I might say, well, this side right here is 4 units, and this one is 1. So I can see that my scale factor is 4. Now it would need to also be true of the other side, but since we already know that these are dilations, we don't really have to check. Okay. Now the other thing I could do is use coordinates. So the image had the coordinates. Let's take point A of 0, 1. The pre-image, that's the pre-image, sorry. The pre-image had the coordinate 0, 1. The image, A prime, has the coordinate 0, 4. Now on that one, I'm not going to be able to use the x values, right? Because they're both 0 and it won't tell me anything. But I could use the y values. And I want the image over the pre-image. So I would do the 4 over the 1, and that tells me the scale factor is 4. Now when you're calculating your scale factor, you might sometimes accidentally get it upside down, like you may have said, oh, it's 1/4. But think about it, if it's 1/4, that's between 0 and 1, that means it should have gotten smaller. If it's bigger than 1, like 4, it should have gotten bigger, just like this one did. Okay, so I know that I got that one right because my scale factor makes sense with the picture. It got larger. Okay, so be thinking about that when you find scale factors. Like, does it make sense in the context of the problem? Okay, so let's look at another one. Draw the shape after its dilation with a given scale factor of k equals 1/4. So if k equals 1/4, that means I need to take each of my coordinates and I need to multiply each of them by 1/4. So let's just write down our coordinates here. For Q, my coordinates are -4, 4. For P, my coordinates are -4, -4. For S, my coordinates are 8, 0. And for R, my coordinates are 8, 8. Now I want to change these. I want to find Q prime, P prime, S prime, and R prime. So first of all, let's think about our scale factor. My scale factor is 1/4, which is between 0 and 1, which means this should reduce the shape, right? Multiplying by the scale factor, multiplying by 1/4 is the same as dividing by 4 because 4 is on the bottom, right? It's like timesing by 1 and dividing by 4. So each of my x and y values need to be divided by 4. So q prime is going to be -1, 1. -4 divided by 4 and 4 divided by 4. P is -1, -1. S is 2, 0. I'm just dividing each of them by 4. And R prime would be 2, 2. Now I can plot my points. So I've got -1, 1. I've got -1, -1. I've got 2, 0. And I've got 2, 2. And remember on this, or notice on this graph that each unit is 2. So that's why I went halfway on these ones. So this would be Q prime, R prime, S prime, P prime, P prime. Okay? Let's try something else. All right. State whether the following dilations are a reduction or an enlargement based on their scale factor. Okay? So if k equals 3, that's bigger than 1, so that is an enlargement. If it's 1/3, that's between 0 and 1, it's going to make it smaller. It's the same as dividing by 3, so that's a reduction. 3/2 is a fraction, but it's a fraction that's bigger than 1 because 3 divided by 2 is 1.5, so that's an enlargement. And 0.67 is between 0 and 1, so that would be a reduction. Okay. So let's look at another example. I have that my scale factor is equal to 2. I want to draw the figure given that scale factor. So again, I'm going to write down the coordinates. So A is equal to -4, -2. It's kind of hard to read, but I think that's what it says. B is -4, +2. C is 0, 2. And D is 0, -2. So I'm going to take my scale factor, I'm going to multiply every x and every y by that scale factor, and that's going to give me my coordinates. So -4 divided by, or multiplied by 2 is -8. 2 times -2 is -4. I don't know what I was doing there. B prime is going to be -8, 4. C prime is going to be 0, 4. And D prime is going to be 0, -4. So now I just plot those points. So -8, -4, first one was done for me, that's A prime. B prime is -8, +4. C is 0, 4. And D is 0, -4. And then I would just draw the shape in. Hopefully a lot more straight than I did. Okay. So there's our dilation. Okay, let's try something else. I'm going to skip that one. Same thing, times it by 1/2. So we're missing part of our explanation here. It's off the screen, so I'll just tell you what it says. It says point T is a vertex of a triangle. So a vertex of a triangle, if I have a triangle, the vertex is one of the corners, right? Point M is the image of T after the dilation. So T is the pre-image. Determine if it is an enlargement or reduction and find the scale factor. So T is the pre-image, it went to M. So this is, so remember we always do image over pre-image. So I would either use the X or the Y. Notice that either way I'm going to get the same thing. 2 over 1 and 10 over 5, they're the same, right? So the scale factor is 2. I noticed that the numbers got larger, so it is an enlargement. Okay. 3, 6 to 2, 4, that is a reduction. The numbers are getting smaller. Take the image and put it over the pre-image, so 4 over 6 or 2 over 3. They're both the same, right? You don't have to do both. You can just do one, which reduces down to 2/3, right? So that's my scale factor. All right, so now we want to use what we've learned to find missing side lengths of dilated shapes. So I know this is a dilation, which means that this figure was dilated to make this one. I can see that this side right here that goes from L to M, right next to my right angle, must be the same as PQ, because it's right next to the right angle as well, and it's the shortest side. This one is 10, and this one is 5. Okay, so I can see that if I put my image over my pre-image, that my scale factor is equal to 2. So in order to get the other side, I'm going to have to take the pre-image and multiply it by the scale factor. So y would be equal to 24. Okay. Find the missing side length of the dilated shapes. I had a right triangle that was, the legs were 5 and 7. I want to know what x is. Again, 7 or 14 divided by 7 is 2. Put the image over the pre-image, so I know I just need to multiply by 2. Okay, so that's it. I hope you enjoyed doing your assignment. If you have any questions, please let me know, and we'll see you next time.